Alrighty guys, it is I, Free 700. We are back with some Eureka 7. Now, it's been a while since we talked about it, but honestly, I feel like I need to get it off my chest. What would be the best sequel to Eureka 7? Some shows, they make sequels that just don't work, and we see this with Eureka 7. They made movies, they made a sequel that just didn't work. They weren't what the fans wanted, newcomers couldn't get into it. So how do we remedy this situation? What can we do that would make Eureka 7 special again? What can we do to create a sequel that everybody would like? Well, we first need to go back to its roots. Cut it back a bit. What is it exactly about Eureka 7 that made it special? Well, it was about optimism, idealism if you will, about love, war, it was about youth, and it was about reality. And it was an interesting clash between these main ideas, where sometimes what you hope for, what you're optimistic for, is conflicted with reality. And sometimes reality would be nicer if only you're a young person. If you're older, that same scenario doesn't seem such a great thing. Like all this adventuring and such, who wants that in their older? You see this a lot with Gramps. He just wants to settle down, have a nice life, easy hard work. Whereas other young people want to be out, they want to be doing stuff. And then you have war mixing into it where some people aren't even given a chance to get old because they die young. This is all these interesting things that were put into Eureka 7 that made it a masterpiece, arguably. The mecha stuff, I know a lot of people are going to talk about that. Well, what about the mechs? What about the cool LFOs and KLF squads? What about that? It was good, but honestly, if Eureka 7 didn't have it, it would have had a strong story regardless. It was a real story about drama, about personal conflicts, about growth and development. It was huge into characters, not so much into the combat. When you really look at it, if every time you see a combat scene you just skipped it, just turned it off, and you continue to the next episode, you'd still have a great story. Amazing, phenomenal story. The war and stuff is just there for conflict, to make it more dramatic. So, with all that being said, I think reality is the most important aspect of Eureka 7, in my mind. Because, as youth fades and ideals start to become conflicted with reality, things can get pretty ugly, especially with relationships. So, how would this make a good sequel? With no mechs, and war is kind of like a forgotten thing, because after all, they're in the second summer of love. Work. Well, you see, we would need a sequel that shows this, that shows all the things that they fought for, all the things that they held true to them, how idealistic they were, is now coming into conflict with reality. Showing how, despite all their hopes and their achievements, that they're not going to be given a luxurious life. They're still going to have to work hard just like all of us. So, where would be the best start to do a sequel? What time period would be great for this storyline, this plot? I think it would be good to do it about a year after Eureka 7, the original show. So at this point, Renton is about 16 years old, and he arrives at Bell Forest on a motorcycle. The motorcycle we keep seeing in all of the pictures and all the fan art, that motorcycle. But on the motorcycle is going to be two figures we've seen a lot, two figures we should know. On it is a person wearing a red, white, and tan jacket. That's Renton. That's the last time we saw him in Eureka 7 episode 50. He had a tan jacket, still white and red, but the tan part was really the new addition to it. And behind him is someone wearing a white jacket with green detail. That would be Eureka. And here we would see the two gazing out at the open road, seeing Bell Forest off in the distance. And they would just hold hands here and go, "We're home." And that's where it would start. This would be the beginning of the sequel to Eureka 7. I honestly just think it should be just 12 episodes, maybe 20 if you're really pushing it. But this is a great start. So after arriving at Bell Forest, it's been a while since they've seen their kids. It's been a year. And kids grow up pretty fast, so if you miss a year, that's a huge chunk of their life, and for them it would feel like a long time. So here we see Mater, Link, Maurice, and we see how they can't even understand who it is they're looking at. Like, they recognize the colors. They recognize Eureka, because Eureka is actually probably older than Renton, arguably, but she doesn't look it. She still looks the same. And then we see Renton, on the other hand, who has aged a little bit, just a little. He's now considered, I guess, a full-grown man at 16 years old. In Japanese, it's a little different. They kind of view 16 as like an adult age, kind of like in Hispanic areas, 15, quinceañera, is kind of viewed as like an adult age. So, hey, I'm willing to roll it. But upon walking in, the kids can't believe their eyes. So you got Mater and Link at the front of Gramps' mechanic shop, and they can't even believe what their eyes are staring at. They're like, Mama? Papa? Like, Renton and Eureka, is that you? And they're just happy to see them. But here we cut away to the shop, the actual inside of the shop, and we see Maurice asking Gramps a bunch of questions. He's asking the old man, like, how do you do this? How do you know something is wrong with the mech just without even inspecting it? Like, how do you know these things? And Gramps just laughs as he hands Maurice something to do, and he sees Maurice fuck it up. He just laughs and goes, oh, you know, you'll get there in time, kid. Don't worry. You got a real knack for it just like your father, Renton. And this is where we hear Renton go, Gramps? Or less enthusiastic, I think. Just, ooh, hey, Gramps. And you see them just shocked, and they're dropping their tools like, oh my god, you're home. And here we would see their life begins. This is the part where Renton and Eureka tell them about the life they've lived, tell them about what they've done in that year. And it's a very brief conversation where all of them are chilling together, eating lunch together. Renton's smiling, Eureka's smiling, the kids are smiling. Gramps is in the background getting some drinks. And here they're talking about how when we last saw them, they were lost in a forest. But they were happy that they were together. They had each other, so they were fine. And here they just traveled around until eventually, when they broke free of the forest, they found a bike that was badly damaged. So Renton, using his engineering knowledge thanks to Gramps, fixed it up. And together they've been traveling without any sense of direction, unsure where to go, not sure how to get from one city to the next. They've been just traveling down this road until recently, when they found out that Bell Forest was nearby. This overall discussion, though, would be cut short by Gramps, who finally comes over with his drink and he goes, hey, Renton and Eureka, now you're home. We gotta get to work so we can help raise this beautiful family you brought. And this is where the whole plot line focuses, is family, is trying to become an adult, trying to go from a teenage boy to a full adult, and the complications that this comes with. See, Gramps isn't really making any money. He's a mechanic, and he's got a bad reputation at that for helping rebels. For the last time we saw him, he literally blew up his shop to get the hell out, so he spent pretty much all of his saving on rebuilding. And now here's his kids and his grandkids, adopted grandkids, who are all young, and no one's working except for him. Well, it's time to put them to work. It's time to show them what it means to be an adult, to be a parent. And that is to make sacrifices. So really, this is what it's all about, is this relationship between Renton and Eureka and the family. Renton and Eureka, their life isn't easier like they hoped it would. Their life is actually more complicated, much harder. They can't just go wherever they please. They're tied. They're tied down by their kids, they're tied down by their relationship to each other, and this is what's going to happen. They're going to have issues with money. They're going to have issues trying to help their kids grow up, but they themselves never really grew up. Renton has some idea of how to help kids grow through, but Eureka not so much. She just keeps babying them. She doesn't quite understand what it means for a human to grow up. She just thinks that they'll do it, but that's not the case. And then we're also going to deal with the lack of time for one another. Like, this is a huge stress for a young couple to not be spending time with each other, especially now they're newly married. They're together, they've had a whole year where they've always been by each other's side, Now they get home and they can't even board together. They can't go out flying through the trap bars. They don't have time. By the time they're done working, it's already late at night. It's time to go to bed because you gotta wake up early in the morning to work again. This is stressful. And here we see Gramps is getting old. He can barely tighten screws appropriately. As we'll see, he'll have a mech in his shop and all of a sudden one of the doors will just fly open and just dent really badly, scratch the paint and everything, to the point that Gramps is like, crap, we actually lost money because we had to repair that door and repaint it because I couldn't appropriately tighten the screws. So now they're working with less hands on board. Now it's just Renton alone because Eureka's not much of a mechanic. And we've seen this in the 50 episodes that we saw in the original series where she's not really much of a mechanic. She can do basic maintenance and that is it. She can't go around repairing the Nirvash. She has no idea how to do it. So it all starts to become a huge burden on Renton alone. And you see the stress really take its toll on him. Like some of his hair may start turning a little white because of all the fucking stress. And then we see it too where the only work that they can find in all of Bell Forest, think about it, no one there is lifting. No one there is riding LFOs. The only one there who can really hire them for mechanical work would be the military at the airfield. And this would cause Renton some personal internal conflict, where every day he goes into the military base at the airfield, he's repairing their LFO, repairing their guns, and he's just thinking about it like, I've seen what war is like. I've seen these pilots in action. I've seen these machines, these LFOs and KLFs. I've seen how much damage they can cause. I've seen the lives they've taken. I've seen how it affected people. I kind of wish I would work for someone else, is kind of what Renton would be getting along this internal monologue, is he would be going, I wish Gramps would take contract work from someone else. But then as he's doing it, he looks around Bell Forest and he goes, there's really no one out there though, except for the military, who would need a mechanic's work. This is the internal conflict that we're talking about, the reality versus idealism. Now throughout the series, we're going to have a few interesting dilemmas, like one person who's going to be kind of an officer, an overseer if you would, he's going to be giving Renton a hard time at his job, and he's going to basically keep berating him as he works. And Renton just keeps thinking, what's the deal with this kid? What's the deal with this guy? Like, why is he on my ass? And this is where it becomes a full-blown conflict between the two, where he's kicking Renton's tools down and Renton gets in his face, ready to fight. The military men have to break it apart and they bring him to the commander's office. And here Gramps shows up and he goes, what's going on? Don't harm my mechanic. What are you doing to him? And he's saying about how Renton has caused an issue and they may have to terminate their contract. And Gramps goes, well, what's the real issue? To which the commander opens up to Gramps because they've been longtime friends. He goes, listen, on the books I can let this slide. I can just get rid of it. But right now there's an officer here who really doesn't like your boy, your grandson. And Gramps is going to be a little pissed, like, who? Well, what were you going to do about it? Just transfer him to another facility. And he'll just go, can't. Reasons is that he lives here and he personally transferred here. He's got all the paperwork necessary to say he's got the right to refuse transfer. And this is where it's going to cause a bit of issue, where Gramps just goes, listen, if you see him, don't say anything. Even if he says anything about Eureka or your kids, just stay quiet. We need this money. We need this work. Which Renton is like, I didn't start it though. He kicked my tools. Like, he's getting in my way. I don't know what else to do in this situation. In which Gramps just tells him, be a man, take it, just get paid and get out. If he keeps bothering you, just go find another officer, go find another military guy and tell them to deal with him. Let him get screwed by his own paperwork. And here's where we're going to realize that this guy, this kid, he's about the same age as Renton, but he's an officer because he did really well in military school. He actually does have a reason to hate Renton. And it's not because Renton's history is some sort of hippie who went out and changed the world and now thinks he's special. No, it's actually a much darker reason for it. It's that long ago, this is like what, episode 20 or something like that, Renton went berserk and killed a bunch of KLF squads. And he only stopped when he realized one of the hands had a ring on it. And he realized he's killing people. And that's when he pretty much stopped killing KLF squads and stopped all that because he realized, oh my god, I'm murdering people. Well, it turns out that wedding ring belongs to the mother of the Imperial officer who's there. The soldier or the officer who's at the military base who's given Renton such a hard time. That's why. Because in his mind, Renton killed his father and didn't face justice. And all he was doing was illegally smuggling goods and doing all this real shady work. Because if you remember, the Gecko State was doing illegal stuff. They were selling people's organs, transporting illegal immigrants, they were freeing prisoners. They were doing a lot of things that were just considered terrorism. Just straight up terrorism, illegal activity. And now he's seeing Renton being regarded as a hero, as this great savior. Yeah, he'd be pretty pissed. It's like, dude, you just killed my dad. And we can see from his own like internal monologuing, he's like, my dad was a great guy, stood up guy. He even helped your gramps at some point, and you just murdered him. Straight up murdered him. And it's just one of those issues that Renton's gonna have to deal with, is that throughout his life he may have been a child, but the consequences of your choices will come, and whether you had any control over it or not, those consequences do affect people, and those people have the right to feel the way they feel. And at first it's going to be hard for Renton to swallow that. He's going to be like, well, your dad was working for bad people. And he'll go, really? You're working with murderers on paper. They were illegally trafficking, drugs, all sorts of stuff. You're saying my dad's working for bad people? So this is where the internal conflict comes in, where Renton is dealing with not only an officer who's giving him a hard time and keeps coming by his Gramps mechanic shop issuing out like tickets saying, oh, this is improperly done, ticket, and costing them money, but there's really nothing you can do about it. There are some people in life you will never make happy, no matter what. There are some people in life who will never get over what grievances you've done to them. Renton's gonna have to deal with that. So is Eureka, and so is their family. Now, speaking of Eureka, let's talk about her. What is she gonna do to help them make money? Well, her mechanic work is lackluster at best. She's only able to do basic maintenance. That's really not that useful. So she's gonna try to find a new way of living, a new job, which is odd because she's never done that before. This is again where we come into play with consequences. The reality is that not everyone finds your hero a hero. The person who you look up to today, maybe someone finds as a villain. And this would be definitely the case with Eureka. Like, for instance, Charles and Ray, they both hated Eureka, thinking that she caused them to no longer have children. Now, that may not be true, but there is some definite clauses to that. And there is other people out there who would just be outright racist to Eureka, go, oh, she's a Corallian. I read in this military book that Corallians are actually evil, blah, blah, blah. So there would be some internal issues she would have, and also she's a woman. Renton would just be like, I don't know what you can do. I mean, you can't really lift up anything like men and stuff like that. So there would be a little bit of sexism, just a little bit. I wouldn't go too crazy about that. It'd be more just about what her reputation. What is it exactly that she has done, which is fucking nothing. She's essentially got no skills. She's only a soldier. Well, she can't go back to that life, especially her reputation breaking from the military, killing who knows how many military members. She can't go back to that. So it would lead to some interesting issues where one of the interesting things is that we would get a reoccurring character that would help Eureka establish a life for herself on her own 2 feet, being able to integrate in human society, being able to make a living on her own. And that would be Dr. Misha. Dr. Misha was in the Gecko State. She was their doctor. So she knows everything about Eureka. Now, the only issue is, though, is that Misha's willing to help Eureka, pay her for whatever it is that she needs, but it would be for an exchange. She would be doing tests on Eureka. This would be like blood samples, doing a little bit invasive procedures. Now, she's a woman, she can make these decisions, whereas Colin said you're not allowed to do that. Eureka's given the go-ahead now. So Misha's going to ask her to take some pills, take some vitamins, take a few things that would be injectable. And we would see that she gets paid well, really well, by Misha. And all it takes is an hour of time. So now Eureka 7's able, Eureka, I keep calling her Eureka 7. Eureka would be able to go around town buying things, doing what she wants. Being able to go out with the kids, being able to spend time with them, spend money, buy them school supplies, anything that they wanted, like shoes, clothes, whatever. But Renton would be a little concerned. Renton would not like it. He would go, whoa, where are you getting all this money from? And Eureka would tell him, oh, I'm getting it from Misha. She set up a doctor office here in Bell Forest. She heard we were here and she came down here thinking it was a good place to start anew. And Renton goes, yeah, but you're not acting normal. Something's off with you. And you can see where Eureka gets weak, she gets dizzy, she feels like she's drained of energy all the time. And this is from all the medicine that's being given to her, all these tests that Misha's doing. And Renton goes, oh my God. I know the money's good, but stop doing this. I would rather be poor than see you suffer like this. But Eureka gets pissed at Renton going, you just don't want to see me succeed. You just want me to rely on you like we've been for the past year. I want to be my own person. I want to rely on my own 2 feet. It would really be like a female empowerment story. So people in Hollywood would be happy with this idea. But it would be a very interesting dilemma between the couple because me and my wife, we have these issues too, where it's like, well, money is good, but it's killing my back. And if I break my back, I'm not going to be able to make any money. And this is kind of like that internal struggle put in display for us, is this issue between Renton and Eureka, where they're going clashing at each other about something like this. Another issue that would be involved in the plot line is actually Maurice. Now, Maurice, I actually think is the most important kid out of them all, because he's already Renton's age. When we first saw him back in episode 1, which was like, what, 14? So Maurice is now 14 years old. Pretty much Renton and Eureka left him. So this would leave him with a very interesting dilemma where he's growing up, he's becoming a man, but he doesn't know what he wants to do with himself. He doesn't know what he wants to do in life. He's learning a bit of engineering, but he doesn't really like it, and he doesn't really understand it. So he feels insignificant compared to Renton, who's just able to easily figure out anything, because his mechanic skills have actually surpassed his grandfather. He's this amazing mechanic who's able to figure out anything. So Maurice is having a bit of an ego issue. As a teenager, we all have that. He's not really social, doesn't really have a lot of friends, and no one really wants to talk to him. They don't even care that his father's like this amazing figure. They just go, oh, whatever. He's special. He's probably got it made. We can't really hang out with Maurice because, he's above us. That kind of social stigma. And this is where Maurice would really have issues with Renton and Eureka, is that they're trying to help him, but they don't know how. And as a teenager, that's very frustrating. When your parents are overbearing on you, they're being too caring, too loving, you just want them to just stop. That's essentially what Maurice is going through. And Renton is going to try to break it down to him like, listen, I had it lucky. I knew I wanted to be a mechanic, but I also went through the same thing. I didn't want to be stuck in this shitty town. I didn't want to be stuck here. There's nothing here. Everything sucks. Like, my favorite lifting spot was just blown away for military testing. Like, there's nothing about Bell Forest I really liked when I was your age. And Maurice would go, really? Like, I didn't know this. And this is where Maurice's relationship would grow and flourish, is that throughout the whole story, it's really about him trying to become a man. Trying to become like Renton, his father, where he's good at something. And from here, I would give people their own discretion as to what they would choose. Maybe Maurice becomes a doctor. Maybe Maurice becomes a mechanic, just like Renton. Or maybe, depending how whatever director hears this, they can decide whatever they wish. Hell, you guys can comment down below. What do you guys think you would want to see Maurice go into? Maybe he becomes a farmer, just like Renton's uncle. Who knows, It would be good to play around with that and see what it is that he's good at, see what it is that he wants to do. Honestly, he's so young that we never really see what he's good at anyways. All we've seen him do is whip out the fucking like Mazanaga on Renton and just go, yeah, and blast your ass to bits. Like, that's all we've seen him do. So I would love to see that. I would love to see Maurice grow and become something of a man himself. So it'd be more of like two people growing up at the same time. You got Renton growing up and assuming the role of an adult, a man. But then you got Maurice growing up going, what kind of man? What am I going to be? And this is where Renton, of course, can give him some insight, like Charles and Ray, where he gives him advice. Like, oh, you smell that? That's what your dad smells like. You got to go with your heart, son. You got to go with your heart. Because if you go by your heart, you can't go wrong. You can't end up in a bad spot. Just follow your heart. And this, of course, would be more interesting character development. Now, how all these plots work out and how they all tie together would actually be really nicely well done by like the end of the episode, where Eureka finally puts her foot down to Misha, Dr. Misha, and says, I'm not a test subject. I was your friend. I was someone. I'm not just someone to study. I'm not a Corallian. I'm human just as much as you are. Could you please stop experimenting on me? And this would be, of course, guided by Renton, who's like, you can work for her. I don't want to see her doing tests on you. And this is where Eureka would go, I don't even think I want to work for her, period. She's a friend. It's different working for a friend versus working for someone else. And this is where I think it would be nice to see Eureka become her own person, where she actually starts taking up secretary work as not for Dr. Misha, but instead for someone else, where she just kind of goes job to job, working as a secretary from one area to another. And she actually built up skills where she becomes very fluent with computers, becomes very fluent with talking to people on a little headset, and she does really well with it. Then we see with Renton where he keeps having these inner dilemmas with his military contract, where sometimes he sees pirates out in the distance and he's like, if I pilot this KLF, I could definitely take them out. But if I do that, I'm going to lose all my contract, all my money. I'll just leave it for them. More people will die, but my hands are tied. I can't risk losing this income because then my family will have nothing to go back on. And then we see where he even talks to the young officer who's been berating him, and he says, I get it, why you're mad. I would hate me too. And I understand if you don't ever heal from this, what I've done to you. But just know that I do feel terrible about it, as I cannot imagine my family losing their fathers. And that's where we see the officer off in the distance, where he still hasn't forgiven Renton. He still hates Renton's guts. But at the same time, he's not going to keep chasing. It's just every time he sees Renton, he's just going to make a little snicker, a little like mocking moment where he may like dirty up something on purpose, but he's never going to actually attack his family like he did before, like issuing out tickets to Gramps' makeshift garage, or issuing out verbal abuse to Renton as he works. So the hatred is still there, but it's a lot more simmered down. Because that's reality, We can't make everyone like us, but we can live together in the same space. Is that too much to ask? Sometimes. Sometimes if the grievances are so deep, yeah, it's a little bit much. But some people, they can swallow that. They can handle that. And then we see, of course, Gramps has passed away. Gramps dies finally of old age, but he's so happy of where he's seeing his family going, the direction they're going. And this is where Maurice finally decides what he wants to be, is at Gramps' funeral. Renton is saddened, but at the same time he's crying of happiness, saying that, it's good to see that he gave Gramps the ending that he wanted, which is that Gramps was happy at the family's direction. He was finally happy. He was finally just the lovable, laughable Gramps that he remembered when he was younger. That would be the best way to end Gramps' story. And with Renton, we see that he's been working on something with the extra money they've been getting. He's been working on something in the back of the garage. And this is where it's unveiled that he's been working on a new Nirvash. Now, using his new understanding of mechanics and LFOs and all that, he has pieced together what we've seen in Eureka 7 AO, where he creates the new Nirvash, the new LFO, which is like an AI program thing. And I think that'd be a good way to end it. Now, there would be some OVA episodes later, that there would be some OVA episodes where like Holland randomly visits by with their kid, and he's just like, "Oh, hey guys, how you doing?" Or then you have Moondoggy coming in with a gecko stay in the airfield, and they see Renton working, and they're like, "Hey Renton, it's good to see you, man. How you doing?" And these would just be OVA episodes. They wouldn't actually be legitimate season episodes. These would come after the whole series is done with, the second sequel is over with, is because they're not important to the story. This is more just catching up, like, "Hey, how's it going, Moondoggy? Oh, we're just still doing our courier business, but this time it's fully legal, fully legit." And you see everyone linking up again, everyone's talking to each other, but then they go away, they leave. They go, "Well, it was good catching up with you, Renton. Miss you, just like the old times," and then they leave. They go. And it leaves us on a nice note, knowing that everyone in the Gecko Stay has developed their own life. Misha meets up with her ex-husband/husband, Dr. Bear, and she gives him some of the information she's learned, but she goes, "Honestly, Dr. Bear, it's best if we just throw away this research, because I just don't feel right how I used my own friends to get this research data." And Dr. Bear just goes, "I understand." And he just breaks the disc and just goes, "All right, there." It's like as if it never happened. This would be just a great sequel. This would be a great idea to explore, because it's an exploration of people's personalities, about how reality conflicts with your ideas. Ideally, Renton doesn't want to work for the military. Here he is repairing guns, repairing these mechanics, these mechs, and making more damage, arguably. But at the same time, he's using that money for good reasons, to raise his kids. And here we see, like, he doesn't have time for the kids. He doesn't have time to show them how to lift. He doesn't know how to make time to buy them boards or buy them pieces to make a board, a lifting board, so they can go out and lift in Renton's favorite spot. But finally, by the end of the season, they finally have it made. They're finally getting money. They're actually able to explore time together now. And you see it where Renton and Eureka are just laying there on the grass holding hands because they're tired from work. But then you see Mater, Link, and Maurice lifting around on the field, not doing amazing stunts, just barely lifting, and then they fall, and they laugh, and they get back up, start lifting again. And Renton and Eureka are finally spending time with each other. Their relationship's healed. All the stuff they've been through is now over with. They are now have it made. And then, of course, that's where it leads up to either Eureka 7AO, where Renton becomes this amazing scientist thanks to his groundbreaking LFO that he designed. Or we could just scrap all of that. Just get rid of it. Just delete it. And just go, "You know what? We're going to make a new one." And this is where it could lead up to new stuff. Like maybe what's going on the other side of the world. Maybe follow Holland and follow Moondoggy. Follow someone and see what else is going on in the Eureka 7 universe. The door is wide open. And I think this, though, would be a great way to end, close the book, just leave it for Renton and Eureka. Maybe a sequel after this sequel would be to explore Anemone and Dominic, see how they're going, see how their lives are progressing. Maybe we go somewhere else, like Warsaw, and we see the war that Warsaw went through. Maybe a prequel, Besides, that has been For You 700. I'm out. I hope you guys enjoyed. If those of you are Eureka 7 fans, tell me what you guys think. Maybe you guys are going to be like, "You know what? I could easily see that being a 12-episode anime that I would totally watch." Maybe I could see it being 2 seasons long, because, hey, this sounds amazing. Because it's exactly what Eureka 7 is. A reality versus idealism. Who knows? Tell me down below.